Yes. All right, that's us.
All right, I am told it is 6 o'clock and we are live. So I'd like to call us to order. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could ask you all please to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I missed y'all at the last meeting. Thank you, Michelle, for standing in. You've all got a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections?
No, ma'am.
If not, that will stand as presented. We are going to start tonight with the public hearing for the 22-23 general fund budget. Ms. Lordo will be speaking to the public, more so than to the board. We'll have our opportunity to discuss it a little bit later when we get to that agenda item, but this is the public presentation for next year. And so remember that we've got people watching in, I suspect, from home.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and welcome to them. Good evening. Tonight, the administration is pleased to present the proposed general fund budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2022-2023 to the public for review and comments. Let me start by just sharing that the state budget process is still ongoing, and actually the House and Senate Conference Committee met today at 2 p.m. to begin their discussions. The conference committee is planning to have the differences and the recommendations settled by Friday, the 10th, I believe, and then they will, each House and Senate, the membership that's on the committee will take it to their respective chambers for a final vote next week on June 15th, is the latest information that we have received. The state, just to give the public a little bit of a background on this process at the state level, it begins in January and it's gone through many versions this year between the House and the Senate, with significant funding differences for our district due to a new education funding model, which we're going to discuss in a little more detail. The district's general fund budget that we are presenting is based on the House 2 amended version, is what they are referring to it as, with the hold harmless added back. And that was a piece that we have significantly fought for during this process, especially in the last couple weeks. So we're very pleased that they added that back. We feel that this allocation model is the most restrictive, meaning worst case scenario, and any additional funding which may be in the final state budget would provide you as a board the opportunity to add additional items or decrease the amount of contingency needed, and you could amend the budget at a later date, which has happened in prior years. Not frequently for us, but it is appropriate to amend the budget if there are any significant differences on the final version. So I'm going to begin with some highlights of our administrative proposal. Under this plan, all teachers would receive a $2,000 pay increase, and all staff would receive a 3% salary increase. And this is, the 3% is consistent with the state budget and what they are planning to increase all state employee salaries by. The $2,000 teacher salary increase is a 4.8% cost of living. And then all eligible employees in our district would also receive a step increase based on years' experience. This budget also includes 20 new classroom teachers for growth, as well as some additional special education teachers and special ed assistants for those classes. The new education funding formula has been, as I mentioned, somewhat of an interesting discussion as the budgets move through the House and Senate. It replaces the 1977 EFA, or Education Finance Act, which uses a base student cost model, or an amount per student times our number of weighted pupils. This funds classrooms based on a statewide average student-teacher ratio. Even though you do not necessarily have that amount of student-teacher ratio, or you're not required to have that in your district, but it is based on a statewide average. Each district under this model receives its share of total state funds based on our proportion of total weighted pupils, and it also includes the index of tax-paying ability, which has been somewhat of a misdemeanor over the years. After Act 388, index of tax-paying ability is based on property residential growth, even though that does not, taxpayers do not pay on their homes, but this formula still includes that. The formula, the weighted pupils also include a poverty weighting increase from 0.2 to 0.5. That is not favorable for our district as well, because we continue to be the lowest poverty district in the state. One of the things that I think the House and Senate members have emphasized is that districts will have flexibility to spend dollars as they determine best. They feel like with the roll-up of several funding strategies, it becomes more of a one pot to districts, and then they can determine how to allocate the funds. They've also been very proud to emphasize that it increases accountability. We feel like we are already 100% in compliance with all of these accountability requirements, but it does state that you must publish your budget on your website, which we have done for many years. You have to use a vendor for your audit that's approved by the state auditor, which our current outside independent CPA firm is on the approved list. And the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office will now create a public dashboard with district data. This is just a snapshot view of our budget history and projections. The most important thing about this is you can see that we are proposing a 2022-2023 budget of $948,964. This is based on projected student enrollment next year of 18,604 students, which is a 5.2% growth for our district. The only year, looking at this chart, you'll see the only year we did experience a decrease in growth was in 2021 due to COVID. But you can see outside of that year, we have been consistent with growth in the range of 5 to 7% on an annual basis. So it makes sense that with that level of growth each year, we are going to expect to see our budget needs increasing. This is a graph of our assessed value history for the last 10 years. You can see that tax year 2021, our assessed value is now at $555,715,351. So it has grown by $72 million over 2020. Of that growth, $49 million is due to residential growth, new homes. $13 million is commercial growth, and then the small other difference is a combination of motor vehicles and other properties such as watercraft. So over a 10-year period, the difference between 2012 and 2021 is 91%. We have almost doubled in assessed value growth over a 10-year period. I think that's very interesting. And we've continued to see it every year increasing. This is a breakdown of our projected revenue plan for next year with this proposed budget. The primary two general fund revenue sources for us are property taxes and state education funding. And you can see the breakdown. Property taxes are slightly over 50%, and state funding is slightly under 50%. And then you can see the other categories are not material at all to funding our general fund budget. As I mentioned previously, the state funding on this proposal is based on the House 2 amended version, including the hold harmless. The portion of state funding increase also includes some growth due to our current year growth. As I've mentioned, we have had growth in 21-22 that we never budgeted that revenue. So we now have the ability to pick up that additional revenue, and it's included in that $6.7 million. On this plan, our transfer from contingency would decrease from $5.2 million to $3.2 million. This would be favorable because these are non-recurring dollars. Once we draw all the money out of the pot, we no longer have that revenue source to go to. So this would be beneficial if we could decrease our dependency on the contingency fund next year. The local taxes projected on this plan, they include a 3% growth rate in taxes, and they also include a millage increase of 16 mills. The millage increases are limited under Act 388 formula across the state for districts. They're based on CPI and growth. Based on the current South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, our millage cap for next year is 21 mills, or 10% higher. We are the largest growth district in the state with our percentage, as we've mentioned. But this budget plan that we are presenting as our recommendation only requires a millage increase of 16 mills, or 7%. So you could authorize 10%. This plan would require 7% of the cap. And as a reminder, just want to remind the public watching, taxpayers do not pay operational millage on a primary residence. So this would have no increase on a tax bill for a primary residence. It would only apply to rental property, vehicles, commercial business, and watercraft. Just to give an example, a vehicle, I ran the numbers on a vehicle that is valued at $25,000.
So a really old vehicle.
Really old vehicle, yes.
Gotcha.
I don't know what the average in our county is, but I assume that was a reasonable estimate, $25,000. With a 16 mil increase, that would increase that taxpayer's tax bill $24 annually, or $6 a month.
Ms. Lordo?
Yes.
This is a point of clarification for the public in particular. The residential units do not pay operations tax like you said.
Correct.
But it will show up on your bill.
Correct. It shows on
Then
your
you have a credit
bill.
to offset it.
The very top block on your bill shows the full amount, and then it says less school tax credit, and it's a negative, and the credit reduces the net amount due.
I just brought this up because I know it creates significant
Correct.
concern,
Correct.
confusion.
And also, you reminded me of something. When I receive calls in October when the tax bills go out from new homeowners to our area who question how much their taxes are, the first thing I ask them to check is that box for the credit. Because when a home is purchased and closed on in York County, it goes on the tax roll automatically at 6% unless the new homeowner has certified that it is their primary residence.
6% is the business rate.
Is the
or rental
business rate.
either.
Correct, correct. So it's very important that homeowners check that, especially new homeowners. And I also ran this, if it was a rental home, valued at $240,000, the 16 mil increase would equal $240 annually, or $20 a month. And on a business with land, building, and equipment in total valued at $350,000. It would increase $408 or $34 a month with the 16 mil increase.
That's a great way of presenting that.
Thank you. So overall, our budgeted revenue for next year would increase $14,324,452 or 8% to match our growth. Next, we're going to talk about our estimated expenditure summary. This is a balanced budget plan. So the estimated expenditures would also be $191.9 million or a $14.3 million or 8% increase. I think the key points to emphasize for our district on expenditures, you can see out of the $14 million increase, $13.2 million is salary and benefits. This is for people. We are in the people business. 89% of our total budget is allocated for staff and personnel resources to serve our students and our schools. The next is our operation and maintenance of our facilities is 6.5%. But outside of operating our buildings and paying our staff, you can see that our other general fund funding categories are 1% or less of our budgeted expenditures. This is our proposal for what we would, as an administration, recommend to add to our budget that makes up our $14.3 million increase. The school board has seen this list prior on some previous budget presentations. The Category 1 priority is things that are either mandated by the state or things that we need to do to be in compliance with state standards, or already committed contracts that are based on either the number of students or the number of staff in our district. That specifically applies to some of our technology contracts and technology use of funds. But this basically, we've mentioned our salary step. The retirement system, once again, is going to require an additional 1% employer increase. Bus drivers will get a 5% plus a 3% state increase, which is mandated in the state budget. So bus drivers will be different. They will get an 8% increase on the bus driver pay scale. We mentioned the classroom teachers. The next couple categories, we are at the end of some of the ESSER funding. And so as we plan for and expected, we will have to move some positions or services provided to those students out of current ESSER funds to the general fund next year. This is the first phase of those funds ending and having to shift over some position cost into the general fund budget. I mentioned adding some services, teachers and assistants for special ed. And then our technology, instruction and network technology contracts, as well as our utilities, cleaning, and insurance. We've added 3 schools recently. We continue to see just the overhead costs for operating our buildings going up. And then with that comes our repairs, supplies, and contracted services for maintenance. Those are our category ones, what we consider we have to fund. I kind of say cash out the door that we need to plan for. So that's a little over $9 million. Category 2 is,
Let me
sure.
go back and ask a question, please, on the bus drivers.
Sure.
Just to clarify, the 3% is the state mandated part. 5% we are doing as a
5% is
or it's all
also the state mandated. They broke it down into 2 pieces.
That's really the question.
They broke it down into 2 pieces and started with the 5% and then said we also want you to, you must also do the 3%. So it's 8% of the current pay rate hourly that we have to do.
Which was our own pay rate.
Correct.
Because we were already paying above the minimum,
Correct.
but we have to add 8% on top of that.
Correct. Yes.
And the employer health insurance increase, which was astronomical for the coming year.
Yeah.
18.1%.
And the 3% part is parallel, is what's being applied to all state employees.
Correct. And then they said we want
5%
you to
is a
do an
separate
additional
state thing for bus
5% for bus drivers. Category 2, we feel is also very important this year to fund. That is our $2,000 salary increase for all teachers. We are very pleased, based on this final House 2 amended version, to be able to fund that with the needed millage increase to do that. But we are very pleased where we ended up with that. And happy to be able to do that for our teachers, as well as the 3% cost of living for all of our staff and the fringe related to both of those. The other 2 items.
Before you do, can I
Oh,
make one comment? about
absolutely.
Past boards, just for the public's benefit and new board members maybe. Past boards have shown a commitment to our staff, our teachers, and our other staff. We know that's the secret sauce to what we do successfully. I think it's important to note tonight, no matter when we approve the budget, teachers and staff hear that. This is, it's going to be included in whatever we approve going forward, the 2,000 and the 3%. And I think now is just speaking for my chair, it's just most important, I believe, to support the profession and support these staff and teachers in light of what has occurred over the country and the issues associated with the shrinking teacher shortage or the increasing teacher shortage. So I just think we're trying to beef this profession up and make it a livable wage, and I think that's important in this budget, and I'm proud to add that as our recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Epps.
And I do want to clarify, so the distinction between those two, the 2,000 is for actual teachers that are paid on a teacher salary scale.
Correct.
Versus all the other members of our staff that are not on a teacher scale would receive the 3%.
Correct. All of our other support scales, our student nutrition scales, and our administrative scales.
And I think that's important because when Wayne was talking about bus drivers,
Right.
For whatever reason, school staff was specifically not included in the 3% that is being given to government employees in the budget
Correct.
throughout the rest of the state. But,
We are not considered a government entity
Right.
for that purpose.
Yeah, only one.
So districts, this is an elective option for districts, other than bus drivers. Districts are not mandated, but I have seen numerous surveys recently of districts across the state, and the majority of districts are proposing and approving this plan, the $2,000 for their teachers and the 3% for their other staff.
rightfully so.
Yes. Then the last 2 positions that we've added as a category 2, we feel are our next 2 priorities based on the request that you've seen the full summary of all the requests. We think that these are impactful district-wide. The first one is a new position, which would be a Director of Educator Effectiveness, Recruitment, and Retention. This would be part of our Human Resources Office and would work 100% on what we repeatedly discuss as far as the teacher shortage and how important it is for us to be out in front of recruitment and retention on a daily basis. That's why we selected this one as a priority. And then we also selected for your consideration the adding a coordinator of science for K through 12. Once again, this would serve all grade levels in the district, and this would align with new science standards that are coming into play. And we think this is an important addition. The board, but for the benefit of our public, we are still operating with a very small curriculum department compared to other districts our size who have a lot of specialty curriculum staff in these various areas, and we have had a long-term plan to add some of these areas. We were able to add some last year, and this would be the next step for us, and this is the priority position requested by curriculum, is a coordinator for science. So those two priority column needs total our proposed increase for consideration of $14.3 million for this budget plan. This is a summary of our operating millage history. Once again, you can see that the growth here matches our growth in student enrollment. We have consistently had a need for an increase in our budget. Once again, our millage is dictated by the Act 388 formula and capped by the Act 388 formula. I did want to point out that countywide millage is unique for York County. It's 30 mills, and you can see has been 30 mills for a while. It is divided by the 4 York County districts based on the 135-day average daily membership. York School District receives 1 mill off the top, and then the remaining 29 mills are divided among the 4 of us. We have been the growth district in recent years, so I have seen our percentage of this pot of money increasing slightly each year. We're now the largest of the 4 York County districts. So we receive these funds monthly from the county based on the prior year, and then it is adjusted by June 30th for the current 135-day numbers.
And can you address the 2021?
Sure.
I believe we actually voted an increase, but then it got readjusted.
You
because
did,
of the-
and that's why I did add the note at the bottom for the benefit of the public that 2021 was a year of reassessment for York County, tax reassessment, and in the year of reassessment, it requires you to roll back. So you roll back your millage. You're not allowed by state law to get a windfall of new tax revenue based on assessed values increasing in your county because of reassessment. So once you receive your reassessment data, you're required to calculate it and roll your millage back to equate to the same amount of revenue. And then you can add on your Act 388 formula, up to your Act 388 formula millage for that year.
So do you remember what we set out to do in terms of a millage increase? I know it ended up being a negative 1.8, but do you recall?
I do not recall off the top of my head.
13, 12?
I was going to say somewhere between 11 and 13. It was consistent with what you see around the years around it.
14, 12, but I could be wrong.
We can double check, yes. But that's a good point. We did roll back as required, and then we added on what you approved in millage increase to fund the budget. But overall, our taxpayers saw a net decrease in millage that year. This is a chart that I like to show every year. It is Insight data, which is at the state level. It's a data model that the state uses to accumulate district expenditures. It's based on audited data. We upload and submit our final audited numbers for our general fund each year by December 1st, just like we do the audit. And the state compiles this into various categories. But we like to show how we compare to our surrounding districts. And you can see that we all are in the range of rounded 10,000 to 11,500. I also like to emphasize once again that our spending is conservative. If you looked at this data for the whole state, you would see that our spending is conservative, not only for comparable districts around us, but statewide districts our size. We continue to be very lean. If you look at the detail, you would see we have the majority of our funding is in instruction and instructional support, very little in leadership and district office level expenditures for our district. One thing that I think is interesting as I looked into the 20 data a little more, I think it was somewhat inconsistent statewide because of COVID with the shutdown in March of that year in areas such as transportation, food service, student nutrition, how districts handle that. So there was some consistency in the data for this year, but this is for fiscal year 1920. This is the latest Insight data that's available. But all Insight data for past years is available on the state website for any of our public that's interested in viewing that. This concludes our public presentation for our proposed general fund budget for next year. We now invite any comments from the audience members who would like to speak. I also wanted to mention that this will be posted on our website as well.
Anyone? All right, I know we're going to have a great deal of conversation about it here in just a little bit, but we'll get to that when we get to our agenda item.
Okay?
Thank you, and
Thank you.
all for listening.
Yep.
With that, we get to move sort of the 180 degrees into some exciting special recognition. A handful of different parts of special recognition. I see people out in the hallway waiting for some of that, so.
It is great.
In
I
the middle
love
of
it.
that exciting budget news, they were in the, for the public, this is the fun part of the meeting for us. One of the primary reasons we exist is to serve students and our parents. And tonight we get to honor those who have excelled, and that's always neat, a neat activity. We're going to start with and some of these folks. I think the first one, Andrew Hodge of Catawba Ridge High School. He was a state 4A boys track 100-meter and 200-meter champion. And I think I got an email that he had his wisdom teeth out today. Is that correct? Okay, so let's just give him a round of applause. And when I call your name, please come to the front. Sierra Smith of Nation Ford High School, the state 5A girls track and 100-meter champion.
Or not.
We're going to get you all a certificate. All right. Also honor Olivia Cleveland, representing Fort Mill High School, the state 5A girls track 3,200-meter champion. Jackson Dawson of Fort Mill High School, state 5A boys track 1,600-meter champion. I think the parents of Olivia Cleveland are here. Would y'all just throw your hands up and wave? Okay, thank you. We'll give y'all-
And thank you for suffering through our budget presentation in the meantime.
It's exciting.
Now you can tell you can get your Boy Scout award now for doing
Yeah,
that.
right, seriously. Yeah.
Okay, was Jackson here? Okay, don't see Jackson. All right. Well, let's give Jackson a round of applause. And now the recognition of the Fort Mill High School girls softball team, the 5A state champions. Come on up for a round. I'd like to get Coach Stegall down, if he's here. Oh, you got your own. You're better than our plaque. That's good. Chuck, come on up and let you brag on these girls a little bit. Okay.
So beautiful. I'm easily hidden back here. Get on in there, coaches.
Chuck Stegall, for those of you who do not know, has coached girls softball at Fort Mill High School for 30?
Well, it'll be my 30th year, but over 25 years.
An amazing feat. Let's give him a hand. He won it all this year.
First off, I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to come in and be recognized. The funny part about it is about 5 or 6 years ago, I was going to go ahead and kind of hang up the cleats and retire. And we were having a camp, and a lot of these girls showed up at the camp. And they were just all over the place, and I was watching them, and I was, this crowd's having fun. And I've always said, if you're not having fun, you don't need to be playing the game. And they were having so much fun, I thought, I said, I might want to just stick around and see what happens with this. And so I said, I'll coach another year. And we had so much fun, and they just absorbed everything like a sponge. And there was no way I could get out with that kind of attitude and the athletic ability that they were starting to show. I said, I want to ride this out. I want to see where it goes. And I kept telling them, keep working hard, get the reward. And they did.
And we know, Coach, that a lot of it is because of your hard work and effort too. So we want to thank you for your years of service to Fort Mill. You graduated from Fort Mill High School, so
My mom and dad graduated from Fort Mill High School.
Oh, that's older than dirt there now. Okay, I probably went to school with them. That's the sad part. All right,
Well, and what he isn't going to say is, so 8 of these girls are seniors that have played together, some of them since they were 7 years old. And that's what he committed to these girls, that he would stick around and see them go out on their senior year. And they're on their way out to college. Here they go. Many of them to play softball, as a matter of fact.
and a proud mom here.
That's right.
Let's give them all another round.
Just put your stuff back
The
here.
parents of the players who are in the room, please stand and we'll acknowledge you.
I won't text anyone.
Or all parents, okay.
I might.
Thank you, girls.
Congratulations, ladies. Nice work.
Great job.
Dedication. You just knock it over. We're good.
Yep, Sue, you up back there. Good job, y'all.
Nice job. Thank you. Congratulations. How you gonna follow that?
Okay. We'll allow them to be loud since they won. Final recognition tonight is the Talon newspaper, did I say that right, of Nation Ford High School, recipient of the South Carolina Scholastic Press Association Best Newsprint Award for 2022. Chris, is anybody here to?
All right.
Okay, great.
I'm Beth Swan, and I'm the advisor for the Talon newspaper. And this is not the first time that the students have taken home Best in State. And in fact, at the regional conference, the Talon took home third in the Best of Show. So that's in the region, which includes 15 states in the District of Columbia. And I've had these students since they were very young girls, and they worked their way up to be editors-in-chief and really took on a tough task all the way through the COVID situation, and have really done an incredible job recording the history of the school. And this year, I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but this year I came up with a QR code that links the publications for all the seniors who graduated, and so they can see the history of the school from their freshman year before COVID, through it, and up to where we are now, and so they can see the fine work that these students have done, and their leadership is inspiring. Very proud of them. You did a great job.
Thank you.
All right. We've got a couple of different minutes to approve, starting with the May 3rd board meeting. Any adjustments or corrections to those?
No, ma'am.
The May 17th special called meeting,
No, ma'am.
and then the 24th, the last board meeting. All right, those will all stand approved with unanimous consent. Do we have any public participation? We do not. Okay. All right, let me flip my agenda over. Yes, sorry, I didn't flip over. Yep, so we have an update on the foundation for high school. Mr. Carter?
I've been fighting with my microphone.
Okay.
So the vision of the I'm going to give the report for the foundation of Fort Mill Schools. The vision of the foundation's teacher grants has changed from the past to this particular year, and it's going to be more of a targeted-based program on the continuing themes of books and technology, which is what most of the teachers did with the teacher grants. So soon, Scott Patterson, who's the executive director of the foundation, has a big announcement to make about that, and so we'll let him make that and talk about what the foundation had voted for and so forth. So in terms of scholarships, we had over 247 students apply for scholarships through the foundation of Fort Mill Schools. 29 were awarded for a total of $42,500, and 3 of these scholarships are going to renew, 4 of them will renew annually. The recipients were 11 from Nation Forward, 11 from Fort Mill High School, and 7 from Catawba Ridge, which makes sense because their student population is about 300 shy. Classroom Ready has opened their registration process again for K through 12 students who need backpacks full of supplies for the next year's school year. They've reported that they're on track in terms of how many have registered this time of the year compared to last year, so they are working hard and diligently to meet those needs. Their annual Stuff the Bus is always the first weekend of August, August 6th, and that's where the public can buy and donate school supplies. That's typically tax-free weekend. And backpack distribution is also scheduled that same weekend on Friday, the 5th, 6th, and 7th. We'll talk about the annual fundraisers. One is the Tech Dowling Annual Golf Tournament, which is on Thursday, June 23rd at the Palisades. We have over 36 teams, and we're full and excited. Can't wait to be a part of that. Oh. We had Clays for the Cause fundraiser a few months ago, and the foundation had doubled the profits from their previous year, so that was a big success, and I'm sure they'll continue. And be looking for a 5K that they're planning in the fall. And again, they always want to thank the businesses, organizations, partnerships, and neighborhoods and individual volunteers who collect donations and who are very generous in their community and giving back to this much, much needed program. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarter. Sort of we've got a staff report and then a bunch of action items, but it's all Ms. Lordo, so.
I was trying to give you as long of a break as
That's
possible.
Right.
So she's back up.
I'm back up. Tonight we have in your packet, and for the public benefit, the monthly financial report as of April 30th. That is the 10th month in our fiscal year. 2 more to go. We're drawing near. The close, our total revenues were $154,333,300. Total expenditures were $137,136,428. So we have a positive year-to-date cash flow, as we would hope and expect at that time, of $17,196,872. No significant delinquent real estate collections to report, but I will report that we have collected 96% of our total budgeted local taxes as of April 30th, 96%.
And the timing of being, when we, in theory, should be at 100%.
Is June 30th. So we still have May and June, which will primarily be vehicles and could be some delinquents, but primarily vehicles, plus all the, if there are any final tax reconciliation adjustments at the county level. As I mentioned, I usually expect the countywide millage to be adjusted some, and that'll happen in June, or as of June. We did collect, if you look at the detail report for April, we did collect a few of the various state tax reimbursements that I wanted to point out, which do normally come in April. So we collected the remaining 10% of local property tax relief, which is $208,000. We collected the homestead exemption, which is $551,282. The manufacturer's depreciation reimbursement, which is $251,804, and the motor carrier tax, which is $187,143. Those are just some unique state tax reimbursement items that come in April. Vehicle tax collections were consistent again at $941,000 for the month of April. And based on my review of year-to-date local tax collections, I'm still estimating that we will end the year at 1.2 to 1.5 million over our budgeted amount for this fiscal year. The impact fees collected to date, $51,256,570. That is on 1,900 single-family units and 1,342 multifamily, or a total of 3,272 combined units. May was a little slower. We had 10 homes and 8 apartments added in May. The comparable data for the 12-month rolling is still about 47% less on single family than the 12-month period for 2020-2021, but it's 68% more on apartments because, as you recall, we had that very large day in February for apartments at 2.7 million, which was our highest day ever. So our apartment percentage still remains higher. Our homes are a little less. The actual May 2022 collections were only $368,000. But as I've said, I'm seeing ups and downs with this now, month to month, with impact fees. But I think the most important thing is we've collected now over $51 million in impact fees.
And in general, the housing developments that were planned, that we knew about, 5 years ago, are all still
In process.
working their way through.
Correct. It's really just which month do the streets get permitted and how many get permitted at a time. It varies on the daily reports I receive. It can be just a couple or it can be a dozen. And in looking at the addresses, you can see that they're all on the same street. Yes. Any questions about the monthly financials or the impact fees? I have a few other things. Okay. I wanted to give you an update on student nutrition. I believe I have mentioned this before. The USDA free breakfast and lunch program waiver, which has allowed during COVID for all students to eat breakfast and lunch free, that waiver expires, that federal government waiver expires June 30th. And from what we're being told, it has not been extended and may not be extended. It is not currently in the federal budget plan to be extended. Some states, interestingly enough, some states have approved their own free and reduced lunch and breakfast program where they're using their own state funding for that. South Carolina has not approved that and is not in the current state budget. So we want to go ahead and are planning to notify our parents that this is a possibility. We're going to encourage them to fill out the free and reduced meal application prior to the start of school. And our plan is to reinstate our meal prices at the pre-COVID levels. So for us, that would be, breakfast would be $1.35 across the district. Elementary lunch would be $2.25. And middle and high school lunches would be either $2.50 or $3 based on the meal choice. So we wanted to let the public be aware, let you be aware, and let you know that we're going to go ahead and notify parents that this is probably going to happen. And certainly, we would be very pleased if the waiver is passed to extend this.
I talked to Ralph's office, and that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. That's what we're hearing.
Do we know if these rates are going to allow us to be at a break-even point?
These rates will allow us, I think what's difficult right now is we have seen an increase in meal participation, as we would expect. And we hope that the majority of our parents have seen the benefit of their child eating with us, the quality of our food. And so we hope we will not see any type of significant decrease in participation, but it's very hard to estimate. We do have enough fund balance in our student nutrition program to offset if our meal participation declines. We feel confident, and that's why we are proposing to go back to our pre-COVID levels and not increase it this time, and then monitor it as we go through next school year for 1 year.
Number of meals aside, that's encouraging, given just increased prices.
Absolutely. Food cost and supply costs for that program have increased tremendously. And we've been fortunate that it's been offset by the federal meal reimbursement rate. But we also run a very tight program. And we've also continued, we have a staff shortage there. I mean, we have saved some money this year because we can't find the full staff that we would use in the cafeterias. So for all those reasons, we do feel, Tammy and I feel confident in starting the year with this plan. And we think we'll be fine next year. If not, we would certainly keep you up to date on our situation.
All right, thank you.
The last item I want to give you an update on is at the prior board meeting on May 24th, you heard a presentation proposal from the high school athletic directors to increase some of the existing coaching supplements and add some supplements for certain sports teams. As a follow-up to that presentation and some of your questions, the administration, we met with the high schools again and discussed it further. We asked them to go back and prioritize their request, similar to what we do with the general fund budget, priority 1, 2, and 3, possibly looking at a phase-in plan based on their priorities. We also discussed again the $100 fee. I shared some estimated increase in revenue if we increase the fee as a district. They are recommending that we maintain the fee at the current level for next year, and we support that. So I just wanted to let you know at this time, our plan is not to bring you a request to increase the fee next year. But they did want me to emphasize they very much appreciate your consideration and your input on this and your consideration for reviewing this and looking at possibly increasing the amount of athletic funding if additional funds become available as we go through the next couple months.
A quick
So I
comment.
wanted to share that with you.
Quick comment. I'm not necessarily looking for a response back, but one of the things I did notice, or debrief, and I wish I would have sent an email, I'm a little bit concerned, or I'm curious why the athletic trainers were not included in that. So that one caught me off guard when it came to that. So I'm not looking for a
Okay,
response
we
now,
can go
but
back
I
and
just-
look at that with them.
Now, when it comes to, like, my first reaction was there's a lack of inclusiveness when it comes to that. So that's my takeaway on that. So just wanted to mention that.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that input.
Yep.
And we'll share that with them. Any other questions about any of these items?
Leanne, I would just add, since I was not here at the last meeting, I did go back and review the presentation. And I, to your point, I think they made some great cases where there are opportunities for increased funding. I think it's a matter of the right priorities and
Absolutely.
Some decisions, days versus numbers versus increased stipends, et cetera. And so I look forward to continuing that conversation as they kind of think through where there might be dollars, where would the dollars be best used, et cetera.
Absolutely. And that's what we share with them. We felt like was the feel of the board from feedback that we've received from you since their presentation. And as I said, they're very appreciative to have had the opportunity to come and share information about their program with you directly. We will continue to work with them and bring you their priorities at a later date. Or send it out to you this summer when we receive it.
If they really get it done
Yes.
soon and we find money, or the state gives us money.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
You're not
You're sitting
gone.
down, but I think you're
You're
up.
up.
I'm like,
Excited. Okay.
Bring a chair with you.
I'm not used to all these
I
items.
believe our next agenda item.
Okay, we'll keep going. So we discussed with you at the last meeting to consider an approval for a year-end transfer. This is consistent with what we have done for several years in the past. The items are consistent with what we have asked you to consider in the past. The detail that I sent you has one slight change, and that is because once we finalized our administrative recommendation for the budget at the $191 million, it would only require $2.6 million to be added into fund balance to maintain a 19% general fund balance reserve. So that allowed us to increase the transfer to the contingency fund from $2 million to $2.4 million. So that was the change between what we discussed at the last meeting and what we're asking you to approve this evening.
So I see 2.6 million.
So 2.6 million needs to be added. Before, I had calculated 3 million needed to be added. So that's a 400,000 was freed up that we can then add to the contingency fund.
Right, so to clarify, there's a handful of small items. There's 2.4 million that you're recommending go into contingency fund. We'll talk in a minute about whether some of that comes right back out, but, and then 2.6 million going into the general fund of this total.
Of the total 5.4 million that I expect where we will end June 30th with our overall excess revenues, of the 5.4 million, 2.6 needs to go into the reserve to keep it at 19%. And so then that allows us the flexibility if you would like to transfer out the remaining difference. The couple items, as I said, are consistent with what we have asked you to approve in the past. It is $148,832 for the media center collections to keep them up to date with compliance standards. The $250,000 for our school small capital purchases. We are starting to review those requests. The schools are calling to see if that's been approved so that we can start ordering for them. $10,000 for new classroom setups for instructional materials. And then $40,000 for equipment replacement for the middle school athletic program. Because they have no other funding source when they need to, I'll give you an example, football helmet replacement is very expensive, or refurbishment.
Has there been a typical number that we've had in the past for small small?
It has been $250,000 as long as I can remember when I first brought this to you. Do you?
We've added a few buildings since then.
We have
That's
added
my
a few
point of bringing
buildings.
that up. Maybe
Great
that
point.
number needs to be going.
And as you recall, sometimes we have the ability to do a second transfer after we get our June 30th final numbers closed later in the summer. Once we get all the final revenue estimates finalized, I may come back to you later and ask you to consider a second request. Once I go through all the detailed small cap purchase request, that may trigger me to come back and say, can we add a little bit more here based on the needs of the school for the next year. And that is the $250,000. We do not allocate a set amount per school. We go through their actual request each year and determine if it meets the requirements of what we intend to use these funds for, and if it's a priority for the next year. And for the most part, we've been able to fund the majority of the items requested, which is, and they're very appreciative of that, because these are things that are too high in dollar to fund out of their school supply budget, their $100 per student budget, and things that we would never put in another capital account or a referendum. These are those middle things. So it allows us a great benefit to help the schools with those needs. But thank you for your comment. And
So out of curiosity, we have kind of the same, I'll call them 5-ish items every year. Is there a reason that we do that as an end-of-year transfer as opposed to putting that in the budget and operating accordingly?
only because we haven't had enough recurring dollars. I mean, our goal would be to, you may remember in some of the years past, we've had a lot of curriculum items for some of the curriculum software and some of the supplies they need. And we have, over time, been able to build those into the recurring general fund budget. That would be our hope, is that eventually these things could be built in to the recurring budget.
Sure. Yeah, like books and
Yes.
classroom setups and things like, I mean, that's been there every year since I've been on the board, so.
These are still the leftovers that haven't made it to the list yet.
So, and those items total 450, right, give or take?
Correct.
Which is 1.5 mils?
Correct.
So it would require
Yes.
an additional 1.5 mils if you wanted to put it in the budget as a line item that way.
Yes.
And we're going to review this again?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
In about 5 minutes.
Yep.
All right, so you're wanting 2.4 to go to contingency and 2.6 to go to general. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it's not to go to general. I'm just asking that you approve a year-end transfer totaling $2,848,832 to be distributed based on this list of items.
2,800,000.
48,
Yeah.
832.
It's at the bottom of that.
No, mine says
Or memorandum.
2,849,911.
849,911.
Or are you looking?
No, it's at the bottom.
It's at the bottom of
The
this one.
memorandum.
Okay, well, that's a different page. I'm on the next page.
Yes.
Always ahead.
I read ahead. All right, I got
I
that.
didn't creatively exactly make them match because I was using pretty exact numbers, so.
All right, so I would like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to transfer $2,848,832 to the contingency fund.
Second.
We have a motion.
Not all to the contingency, I'm sorry.
Just transfer it. Wherever it's got to
Yes,
go, just
thank you.
transfer it.
We have a motion and a second for a year-end transfer in the amount of 2,848,832. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up is the actual budget discussion. So I think everybody heard the budget conversation. I mean, before we open it up to a motion, I would just entertain what questions and discussion you guys want to have among sort of a couple categories. One would be the list of items that are being requested, the other being the funding mechanism between millage and contingency dollars, and any other questions or comments you want to make. Who would like to go first?
I would.
knew
With
with that deep
probably the
breath.
most obvious question that you know is coming from me. Why did we decide to leave off Category 3 and Category 4 and not raise the full amount of millage?
So we decided we pulled in 2 items from Category 3. We are hopeful that the final state budget may afford us the opportunity to come back to you to finish out funding Category 3 for the remaining 3 items, and or possibly going into Category 4. We felt like the 16 mills would attain our number 1 goal on this budget plan, is to fund the salaries, to fund the $2,000 teacher salary increase and the 3% cost of living for the staff. That is our number 1 funding priority, outside of the things I said we have to do, the Category 1s, cash out the door, as I like to refer to it. So we felt like the 16 mills affords us the ability to confirm for our teachers that that would be the salary increase. And that's where we came up with that as the acceptable amount, if the majority of the board is comfortable with that. You've seen the whole list of requests. There are needs in the district. As I say every year, our principals and departments do a great job with that. It is an extensive list of things that we like to continue to put in front of you for consideration. All needed items, all needed items. But the number 1 for us as administration this year was funding the salary increases at that level.
Right. So I guess my concern is, because I heard some things in the presentation that I'm obviously, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that this is what's in the budget and that teachers and our staff are getting the due raises that they deserve. But it's also the due raises that everybody's getting across the state. So what are we doing more in Fort Mill? The slide, I know we're very proud of the slide that talks about us being lean. I hate it. To be honest, I hate the slide. I don't want to do more with less. I want to do more with more. And I feel like we've spent a lot of time invested in visiting schools where we're seeing things like the need for MTSS, the need for a stronger, additional staff in the curriculum department, additional 4-year-old at-risk programs. We sat here and talked for an hour and a half about athletics. We've had lots of conversations, and then to come to the table and leave millage out there, which is really our only ability to generate more money, because we're handcuffed by what the state is basically dictating to us, which completely is underfunding year after year after year, and Fort Mill seems to be getting penalized. So we're taking away our only taxing mechanism to raise more money for these needed gaps that our staff has identified, and just leaving them on the table. And I just disagree with it.
Can I ask a question that sort of expands on that? I'm curious your confidence level in the budget process for next year. If I understood you correctly, and this is one of the reasons I may share some of your concerns, but at the same time have some different opinions, that as I understand it, this budget that you brought us was based on the House version that is some new formula that was created this year that has at the moment a proviso, that has at the moment a 1-year hold harmless clause.
Correct.
And I think a lot of the programs that you're talking about, programs and or positions, would obviously be recurring dollars, that I'm curious what degree of confidence you have that this budget process and or level amount will continue next year and the year after, whereas we used to have base student cost, and while it fluctuated a little bit, now it feels like, to me anyway, that we've got a new funding mechanism that could change dramatically next year and may or may not include a hold harmless or something.
I think
Yes?
that where we are now with the House version has the hold harmless put in. The Senate version had the terminology stake in the ground funding. So I don't think the intent of either the House or the Senate was for any of the districts in South Carolina to receive an amount less than they're currently receiving. They just now have landed on that in a different way. So my confidence level has increased in the last 2 weeks with what happened with the House 2 amended hold harmless version because of that and the discussions we've had with legislators. I don't know next year what the terminology will be, but I hope, I certainly have, no guarantee that they won't go back to where we started in January, February on this. But I think that the intent of both bodies was that no districts would lose. They have been very public about the fact that they put $227 million into education, and they just went about it in different ways with these formulas. So I am hoping that we wouldn't be back at that situation of losing millions when we start the budget process next year, in that the terminology I don't know whether the terminology will end up being the House version as it is this year or the Senate version.
Or the weightings change.
Or the
right?
weightings change.
Those
Correct.
things that help and
Correct.
harm.
And I've said before, I think, unfortunately, we're not in a situation of doing a lot of multi-year strategic planning on this. We're almost being forced to go year to year and make those decisions. Even I've heard legislators say with the new funding formula, they will continue to evaluate it. Now, they can evaluate it might be unfavorable for us based on our poverty and our growth situation, but they've said they will continue to evaluate it going forward. I think that across the state, my group of peers, we had no input before this started happening. I think now we're all much more aware, and we will, even this fall, be communicating with our legislators about this as they start to have discussions going into next year's budget. We will be on this early on with information provided to them that we did not have the opportunity to do this year.
And can you remind us generally, when you're talking about the hold harmless money from the House or the stake in the ground funding from the Senate, what those numbers look like, just generally?
For us, the hold harmless was an additional $5.6 million. The original House version that came out had us losing that money. And then they said, no, that was a mistake. We never intended for that to happen. We want to hold all the districts harmless, which I think there's 5 of us, and we by far got the largest increase. They said, no, that was not the intent. We don't want any districts to receive less than they're currently receiving.
But again, that's just a one-year proviso, so the following year, they could just not do it, and then here we are, almost $6 million short.
Could happen, yes.
All right, so,
So,
go ahead, Scott.
I was just,
I got plenty of
does
stuff, but you
anybody
go
on
ahead.
this board have any confidence in anything that's going on at the state from year to year?
Well, that's why, I've been fairly vocal that I'm not confident that adopting a budget at this point is the most prudent thing to do. Now, because and Ms. Lorda, please don't take these comments as negative. They're not negative. I appreciate what you do and the numbers that you give us, and you look at things, but this thing has swung from a minus millions of dollars to a plus millions of dollars. And the differential, I think, was somewhere 16 million, a large percentage of our budget. So I look at this as a temporary budget. I really look at tonight as more of a temporary thing until we can get more clarity from the state And we didn't, the hold harmless was omitted somewhere mysteriously from the House version that could mysteriously disappear again. And we'd be in a world of hurt. Now, I appreciate your confidence in the process, but I don't have it. So I don't think it's prudent to adopt this budget at all. But here's the problem. We've got I saw HR passing up a large packet to our superintendent. I'm hoping that means that 60 teachers that we needed a couple weeks ago is a lot less. I'm hoping and praying for that. But it's going to be it's going to be very difficult to recruit and compete with our surrounding districts if we don't, at a minimum, increase the teacher salary scale at the $2,000 level to start the year with everybody that we need. And I'm not even sure there's enough teachers out there to do that, but we got to take that 60 to something pretty darn close to zero. And so that's how I got behind, all right, we've got to do number one, no question about it. Number two, I don't have much question about getting to number two. We've got to do it one way or the other, regardless of what budget numbers come from the state. So I'm comfortable with that, but I almost view it as a temporary thing, in my view. And as a result, I would not support Category 2, Items 3 and 4 at this time. Now, I'm not suggesting that they don't matter and that they are not needed, or that anything that Dr. Frattaroli is talking about is not needed. I'm just not sure we should count our chickens before the eggs hatch.
So, does anyone else want to go? Because I got a few things to say.
Go right on ahead.
So, I'll channel from last time. I'll tamp that down. So, Dr. Frattaroli, you and I are in strong agreement. Most people know, if you watched 2 weeks ago, you know where I stand on this situation here. And at the end of the day, in my mind, legislators are still going to be an issue, period. We've been talking about this before I was on the board. Since I've been on the board, we're going to continue to talk about that. So we're going to have to find unique ways of being able to fund certain items. So here's what I did after my little rant that I did or facilitated 2 weeks ago. So I decided to, Ms. Lordo, you referred to current operating expenditures per pupil from the Insight data.
Correct.
So I decided to do somewhat of a deep dive. So what I did was I pulled all the school districts from the state. I didn't review all the school districts, but what I did do is I reviewed Richland 2, Greenville, Dorchester, Lexington 1, Lexington 5, and the other 4 schools that are in this county. So that's what I did. What it revolved around was when you're on that Insight modeling tool page, it provides you with the following. Instruction, that's a category. Instructional support, that's another category with some subheads. Operations, other commitments, and then leadership. It validated what I ranted about 2 weeks ago. So my question for you, Mr. Lordo, is there value from reviewing these here, and what's your interpretation of this, and how do we use it as a district?
So I think Insight, as I think I mentioned in the budget presentation, it is based on audited financial data. So every district in the state is required to upload their final general ledger data. We also all have the same accounting general ledger codes, so everything is consistent among the state. The benefit of Insight is that it categorizes consistently for all districts. So if you look at Fort Mill and look at what we spend instructionally, or what we spend leadership, which is such a small number, and you compare it to what other districts spend, it is consistent, and I'm confident because of that reason in how we have to report it to the state. I think I'm accurate in saying, too, that most districts use this when we're publicly asked how much we spend per pupil. we go to this site and use this data because we know that it is consistent with what another district may report. And it's not on our end to make a judgment call on what we include or do not include in that amount per student. I periodically will pull that up and look at some other districts. But I also think one of the biggest benefits of that is for the public because it is publicly accessible so that anyone who would like to see what is spent by those categories or just in total for a district for a given year has access, as we talked about, the accountability and as a school district, what we are required to provide publicly. This is a great tool for that as well. So I'm completely confident in that data because I know how it's generated, which is different than sometimes I see other data for us that we have no idea where the numbers came from. I know where those numbers come from.
So just to give the public some insight here, so when you locate this on the inside page, if you use instruction as a guidance or as a benchmark, what happens here is you'll have a category that says face-to-face teaching. And within face-to-face teaching, it shares with instructional teachers, substitutes, and then there's classroom materials, and there's nothing in there. And then there's instructional support and other different categories. But what it does, it gives you, so you're able to see the revenues or the budget of those schools. You're able to see the actual enrollment of, or student enrollment of those schools. And it gives you a percentage of the revenues or the percentage of the budget that's being used per category. So when I saw that, it validated my rant last or 2 weeks ago. And I hate to say rant, but I'm struggling with the lack of support when it comes from legislators regarding funding. And I think in my mind, in my opinion, we have to be able to hold legislators accountable. And if we cannot or we choose not to, we have to be able to look at millages and not be afraid to increase millages. I believe the taxpayer in general wants a continued school district. If they do, these are some of the ramifications or reflection from that. That's my opinion on that. So
Thank you.
just wanted to share that with
Sure.
you.
So with what you pulled there, some of the things that it doesn't reflect is how they're getting their funding. So many of the districts, other than the local ones that you mentioned, are larger than us. And they're also a much higher poverty level than us. So we get penalized tenfold because of our lack of poverty and because of our growth. We always have a whole lot more kids that show up after our 130-day or even our 140-day, wherever they want to pull their numbers from. And so our numbers don't reflect strongly, I guess what I would call strongly, where the money's coming from and how many kids we're spending it on versus how many they're spending it on because they're not growing to the same level because they've got so much more poverty. They're getting a whole lot more to work with in their pot than we get in our pot. But you are 100% accurate that we have to be holding other people accountable because they're the ones that are driving what we're allowed and able to do. And right now, we're kind of just completely hand-tied.
So I appreciate that. And so even on top of that, it goes back to what Dr. Federoli was saying and what I said a couple of weeks ago. We got to find other ways. If there are other ways to allocate revenues or to ascertain revenues, then we need to do that. And that's my take on that.
Michelle, one of the other things, and you alluded to this, our mix is very different than most of those districts in terms of residential versus commercial, because, again, our revenue comes from property taxes, but not from roofs, not from private residences. And so the difference is we've got a smaller subset of businesses paying a higher proportion in a district like ours versus another district that has a large number of businesses and large businesses to spread it among. And that's just an unfortunate reality of
The difference of a
our
Fort Mill to a Rock Hill
layout, yeah.
is exactly that. The other biggest thing that I would say, and again, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what I have bigger concerns or reservations towards is if we were to go into the expectations for next year, and let's say we did all 21 mills and we've got all these extra people and bodies and whatnot, and that's great because it's gonna get us through 22, 23. But when it comes time to sit here and do the 23, 24 budget, and we end up upside down as we are before we got our conversation with Gary and some of the rest of the changes, the last thing I personally wanna do is have to sit here and pick and choose. Not that we specifically are doing that, but you guys understand what I'm saying. I don't want to have to pick and choose who's going to retain a job and a role in Fort Mill School District and who's no longer going to have a job because we do not have an opportunity or a mechanism to fund their position next year. And I think that as an HR person in a former, that there's nothing worse than riding that roller coaster. I don't want to do that.
Ms. Brady, let's not forget, we have, I think, 1.5 or so million of folks that are currently on the payroll positions we have to bring into the general budget over the next year or two.
Yeah, in those
Correct.
ESSER
Under
1s, 2s,
ESSER.
and 3s, yes.
Correct.
Again, this still goes back to, where's the support coming from? Are we getting it from legislators? If we're not, what are we doing about it? And if we're not doing anything about it, what can we do on our end? That's my response to that. And we need to be able to look in the mirror and say we're going to do something on our end. I'm willing to do that on my end, and I'm willing to fight for that on my end, period.
You know, I think the problem is that the mindset at the state level, the language says that that the state is required to produce or to provide a minimally adequate education. And until we get that language changed and until we get that mindset change, I think we're always going to have this struggle. So that's something that we need to talk about, and really the public and the teachers and everybody needs to talk about that, because the kids are our future, and the teachers are so important in that, especially when you're talking about teachers that came off a short summer and a full year without, COVID and everything else. They're tired and they worked hard this year.
And I'm
You
tired of
can
having this
see-
conversation.
Yes. So,
You're welcome to come with us to Columbia next time.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
we-
So-
Leanne and Dr. Epps and I went and when they were talking about this new calculation, and we made our case about the allocation methodology and the challenges that it provides to a district like ours, and unfortunately, we don't look like the rest of the districts in the state. And that doesn't seem to be recognized, but we'll keep fighting the fight.
Well, Ms. Spears, you bring up a good point in that who pays for school operations in the Fort Mill School District? And it's businesses.
Businesses.
It's rentals, it's businesses, and I don't know what the number is. Plus 408, probably not too bad for businesses, but you need more of them. You need more small businesses. You don't need more big businesses because they're going to get a fee in lieu. You need more small businesses to pay the full ride. And if you're looking at it competitively between Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Clover, Chester,
Right.
we're losing competitive advantage to businesses looking at that number. And I think that should be it's not all of it, but it's in the mix of trade-offs.
And taxes are not the only reason. It's also land value, right? That's why, like I said, I use Chester because the winery, right, could go to Chester because there's land and it's cheap, and so are their taxes, and ours are not.
I just want to assure you and the public also, I feel like this year, over the past couple months, we have worked probably harder we work hard every year on this at the state level and getting in front of our state legislators and working with the School Boards Association. I work very closely with I'm on the legislative committee for the South Carolina School Business Officials. But we as a district, we've become known as a leader in pushing for this because of our unique situation. I don't know what else we could have done this year. We have been in front of everyone that we could repeatedly. And we've been successful somewhat, as I mentioned, with the hold harmless. I think we assisted with what came through as the Senate finance version of the budget. But now it's just, we've had our say, we've stated our case, and it's now become out of our hands.
Yeah, I'd like to add a comment or two. If you've been paying attention, well, let's go back to what many of you have said. We don't look a lot like a lot of the state. That's true, demographically speaking, socioeconomically speaking. Because of that, I believe we looked at differently. If you went to the legislative breakfast last couple of weeks ago, Representative Tommy Pope stood up and said, and this is his words, not mine, there are people who want to destroy public ed in the state. And if you look at what's happening with a big push for public dollars to go to private schools, what else would you conclude? So I think, like Christy said, we're down there fighting the fight. I mean, all the organizations are fighting for all 82 school districts. It's not everybody likes public ed. I mean, I don't know how else not everybody's in favor of public ed becoming stronger. I don't understand the end game as a state. If we're not going to have a strong public school system, I don't know how we attract industry, we have an educated workforce. I just don't get that piece of it, the end game piece, if we're going to let our public schools suffer. But I've been watching it for 40 years. The support for public ed has declined across the country, not just South Carolina. And that's unfortunate for us because that's just, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but we're fighting the good fight, I think somebody said.
So, Dr. Epps, I appreciate that, and so I want to say to you and Christy and Ms. Lordo, I'm hoping I'm not coming across that you all have not been fighting, but I'm just making a reality. It is what it is. What's changed? So, whatever the controllables we have, I think we need to exercise those. And if we choose not to do that, shame on us. And we certainly have to look at every parameter, every variable that's out there. But I'm just letting you all know that for me and from where I sit, I'm willing to put all my cards on the table and say, this is where I stand and this is what I'm about. And so whatever we're able to do when it comes to providing more funding for our adorable district, and one of the main reasons why the majority of the people who move to Fort Mill, it's for the school district. We shouldn't undermine the integrity of that.
So it's your position that we should be approving a 21% or a 21 mil increase budget tonight?
Which is 8.6%.
No. The
Yeah.
16 mil budget was 8%, wasn't it?
No.
I'm talking off the millage. We're at
sorry.
244.5.
Okay.
Go 21 versus 16 mills is at 6.5%, just to give you a feel for that,
Right.
since you mentioned percentage.
But we don't necessarily have, I mean, we've seen line sections, category 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever we want to call it. But we don't have that laid out here. Is it, well, I think that it's disingenuous to either approve a budget that doesn't have kind of everything that's lined and says this is where it's at and what it wants to go. But I think it's even worse to say we're going to approve what we've got here, but we may in the fall or in July change it because.
Well, number one, no one has heard me say that. So no one's heard me say that.
No,
If that's what you're referring to.
I'm asking. I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
saying-
what you're hearing me say is, A, we need to have a conversation. We need to have a sidebar conversation, discuss this more in detail, and that's how you try to improve things. But I'm not saying right now that we make a decision on whatever that mill increase is, whatever the case may be. I'm just sitting there saying that the reality is we keep kicking the can down the road. So the reality is, what are we going to do? So we're going to keep talking about it, fine. But somewhere down the road, we're going to be able to have to look in the mirror and say, either we're not doing this, and again, we're shortchanging some important areas, and it's because of lack of funding. The question is there a way to make up some funding not undermine the integrity of the budget per se. If we are going to undermine the integrity of the budget, then obviously it makes no sense to do it.
I think what Ms. Lordo has presented to us is that the administration feels strongly that we need $191 million to operate the district at a minimum.
Correct.
And what I think there may be some worthwhile discussion and debate. The balance that you brought to us was a 16 mil increase and 3.2 million out of contingency, of which, by the way, we just put 2.4
Or,
away, 2.4 into contingency. I would be remiss not to say, the reason we have 2.4 to put into contingency was the millage increase we did last year, right? So
And that happens.
right, so, which is great. I mean, I'd rather be under budget than over budget every day. And it's a half a percentage point. So she does a fantastic job of keeping us on budget. It's just that we had a small amount of excess. And so I think that's why what you're recommending is we take 16 mils of new money and we repurpose most of what we had left over from this year, right? We could swing that balance and take all 21 mils in new money, which would require, I don't know what the calculation is, and you could probably do it off your head, less dollars out of contingency for a rainy day scenario, if we think that could be needed and, down the road.
it would require 1.5 million less because it is 300,000 is the value of a mill in the general fund right now, our estimate.
So it'd be 1.7 out of.
Correct.
So we would net gain.
Yes.
Again, my somewhat reservation with doing that is I feel a little disingenuous that we raised taxes last year, that we should put those dollars back into the things that we initially raised them for, which is why I was comfortable with something in the 16 range that pulls the money back out of contingency. I think the other thing that you're asking is, should we be doing more? And I'm hearing a couple different flavors of this, but I think what's been proposed is not to commit to additional staffing positions with the current level of uncertainty around not only this current budget, because it's not approved yet at the State House, but certainly the funding model and the go-forward view. That's the couple things that I think we're still debating. Yes.
Did you seem to think that they would come to an agreement on the budget by the end of this week? Or was that a different date?
We think by the 15th.
Yes, we think they're gonna come to an agreement by the end of this week, but they're gonna take it to vote.
Both
So
bodies.
the House Ways and
It'll be
Means.
next Wednesday or
Correct.
so through Friday, we should have, we've been told by the legislators that we'll have a number probably.
And we can certainly defer and not approve. However, by not approving, it also means we don't leave this room today guaranteeing the $2,000 raise and the 3% raise. And I think that's what the administration has said would be very beneficial to be able to do tonight, for the things on this page being the really critical items that need to move forward.
So I have a question and a comment. I'll start with a comment. I understand the swing of, we raised taxes last year, and now we're going to take some of that and put it towards this year's budget. But we have a year-end transfer every year. We raised taxes last year with a year-end transfer, right? So I don't necessarily buy into that contingency. I think we're smart in how we've moved it to contingency, but I don't think that should affect the fact that we shouldn't raise millage more to get additional positions. I just disagree with that. But my question for you is, because Ms. Spears asked about confidence in budgets going forward, what is your confidence level that after the 15th, that we're going to see the potential for some additional Category 3 and Category 4 positions to be approved?
I can only go on discussions I've had with some of my peers who are tied in pretty closely with House and Senate staffers. And this was last Friday. And I was told that they felt like this House 2 amended with hold harmless was going to be the version, is what I was told last Friday.
And I will,
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead, Michelle.
which gives us the least amount of money by comparison to the Senate stake in the ground version.
Correct. It's several million less, which is why we are coming back with this plan as our administration's recommended budget plan. We would love to have more. We would love to have more. We would welcome the opportunity to come back to you and ask you to consider amending the budget later. But we feel like this is a solid plan based on what we think, worst case scenario. I really don't expect we would get less funding after our discussions that we've had with conferee members. I don't think we will see less. And I don't think, even if we did see less, we feel like as administration, we're asking for your commitment on these salaries because worst case, we would ask you to go back and pull more out of contingency to do that. And that's why it was important to us to ask you to consider approving this budget plan tonight so that we could guarantee the teachers and the staff that this would be the plan moving forward.
Mrs. Loder, so I want to say this to you. So number one, you've been wonderful of my year and a half of the Q&A that I've given you. And your answers have been spot on. The public, those of you that don't know, we have a CFO that's highly regarded in the state, and there are many people that are in her role who call her, and she's mentored some of them. And so I just wanted to share with you all that when I hear Mrs. Lordell speak, I listen, and I take very serious what she's saying tonight, and I'm certainly in support of what she's stating. That's where I sit, knowing what I know.
Thank you for your
So I
kind
just want to
words.
share that with you.
Ms. Lordo, when you mention a potential amended budget, you're not talking about coming back to us and asking for us to reduce our budget. You're talking about keeping it the 191 million and
Correct.
potentially increasing it.
Correct.
Unless
Correct.
something goes sideways in the state.
Right,
Right.
And then what she's saying is we might have to amend it in the way we
right.
bring forward additional dollars to not have to cut anything we commit to tonight.
'Cause
If we needed to adjust that transfer based on the final state budget, I would come back to you and ask you to formally amend that, even though the bottom line would not change. For audit purposes, I would be more comfortable if you formally amended something like that. We do have an administration, the superintendent and myself, we have authority to move items within the budget per board policy as long as we do not change the bottom line. But for something like that with that transfer, I would ask you to approve that. Yes.
Ms. Spears? Yes, sir. We put a temporary meeting on for the end of June.
We have a date that we know would work for our schedules.
What is our July? Do we have a July meeting on the calendar?
We do not.
We don't.
We do not.
So I know not 100% of the board couldn't make that June 28th.
6 out of 7, my understanding.
And so I guess maybe perhaps my suggestion is there a date in July that we could come back? We will have the number from the state. It will be analyzed. The administration can bring that back and we can have a conversation, much like what Dr. Frateroli and Mr. Bodie are talking about, and bring those up, because I do think it's imperative to get to the $2,000 teacher salary
If you wait
tonight.
till July to approve your budget, I believe you'll be the last district
Yes.
in the state.
And we need,
Hold
I
on,
think by
let me
state
clarify.
law,
I'm not talking about waiting until July to do the budget.
You're
I'm
saying,
talking
can
about-
we find a date in July instead of the end of June when all 7 are available for any
discuss
potential
edits.
amendments?
Correct. So.
So what happened to the 28th?
go ahead and-
Help me understand that.
We've got 6 out of 7 that can attend.
So why did we schedule the 28th then?
I don't know, I wasn't here.
I don't understand. I just-
We
did-
said to
we didn't
block it
schedule that. We were just
tentatively
checking.
That was a
as,
date that was thrown out as a possibility, but
That we put on the calendar.
we have not put anything on the calendar.
That was a fallback
But Brian's point is, let's look for a date that all 7 can do it, and if it happens to be in July, it happens to be in July. And if we have passed a budget tonight, I don't think there's any harm in a July date versus a June 28th. It doesn't
wouldn't
matter.
understand.
I don't have a problem with that. I just thought it was on the calendar, so
No.
No. Okay.
That's my suggestion, because I do, again, I hope the 60 has gone lower by the end of tonight, but it's probably not going to be less than 30, right? So-
Hey, where's your positivity over there?
But I think if we could assure,
Have you seen inflation?
last night, for example, Greenville passed their budget. I think if we could assure our staff and teachers that that's going to remain in place, that was our comfort in approving tonight.
And our future recruits.
Exactly. Then we can come back 5 days in July if y'all want to and talk about the other.
I mean, that
Yeah,
shouldn't be a hard sell. I mean, I don't know.
But I think it would be also important should this pass, that we can now tell people we're interviewing and so forth, that we're paying at this level.
Yes.
Instead of, we're not sure what we're paying.
yep.
And in terms of retention, I can see where a teacher might be concerned about his or her future, and if they see somebody on, the other side that's paying a little bit more, we'd want to retain that teacher too.
Well, I think it's that everybody around the state is doing it with these assumptions, so.
In fact, Greenville's taking the Senate assumption. Really risky. They passed theirs on the Senate assumption.
Well, Greenville's got a whole lot bigger tax ability base than we've got, so.
We pass budgets every year on assumptions because they never have their budget completed by the time we
correct.
do it, so.
But then again, Greenville
We
may
vote on
not have been
best.
heard on the House like we were.
I don't think anybody was hurt like we were, no matter where.
Greenville's not a hold harmless, I don't
They
believe.
didn't have a hold harmless
No.
problem. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
So I'm comfortable moving forward.
so
with some-
now that we've had all that
So, okay.
conversation,
Understand
is
you
there a
now.
motion?
All right, so I would like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve a budget for the 22-23 school year as presented at $191,948,964 with the millage and/or potential of adjustments to that based on the state's
No, on the House.
finalization of our allocations.
Second.
So I think I heard a motion and a second.
Well, I didn't know if she was done. I was just want to make
Well,
sure.
I was thinking, I was trying to decide if I was done or not.
So I think we have a motion and a second to approve the budget as presented, which involves $191,948,964 to be achieved at this point by a 16 mil and a $3.2 million transfer from contingency.
I didn't want to quite go that
Any-
far,
well, you
but
did.
okay. No, I didn't. I never said millage or otherwise. No, I didn't.
Is there any further discussion then?
No.
So I started off the conversation, so I just want to finish it with saying, I'm disappointed that we're not at 21 mils. I mean, that's very evident. It doesn't change the appreciation that I have for the administration's hard work in putting the budget together. I think it's too important to make sure that we approve a budget that will have the teacher raises in there, and the cost of living raises for all of our staff. So I appreciate the work.
Thank you.
Wish it would have been 21, but that's okay.
I do have, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say we have the potential of amending it too, so we might get there.
I do have a little bit of conversation, because I have category 2, items 3 and 4. Considering we're going to come back, hopefully at a date in July that we can all agree on and everybody be here. I think this is a better opportunity to discuss those additions of staff at that meeting and not this one. I don't think,
Go ahead.
okay.
I'm contemplating. Go ahead.
Just because of the uncertainty surrounding the state budget. As a result, I would move to amend the motion to reduce the budgeted amount by, I'm calculating,
Like a
278,880.
I was gonna say $250,000 roughly.
Is there a second? Sorry, there is no second. So we're back to the original motion and second.
I will add on to what he said. I think it would be prudent probably to hold off on actually implementing those positions until we have more information. But I think we should go ahead and approve it.
To be clear, wholly supportive of the rest of 1 and 2. $2,000 raise, I'm all in.
For $279,000, I don't see that that makes, hang on. The percentage is non-existent
Yeah, 191.
in a $191 million budget that I don't, and I don't see a reason to hold off on those positions based on the, in particular, the most important one, in my opinion, has to do with retention and recruiting, which is our number one problem in the nation, not just here, but in the nation. I don't see that being prudent on our part personally.
0.14%.
0.0014.
So we have a motion
0.14%.
and a second.
Yeah.
Is there any further conversation? If not, all of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries.
Thank you.
And we have a budget?
Yes.
For now,
We have raises.
and we have
Right.
raises.
And we will. We'll come back and we'll discuss more when we know more.
Right.
All right, we have one other action item that I'm sure will be equally as exciting.
Oh, come on now. Come on. You're sitting there shaking your head no. Come on.
So based off the last 2 or 3 meetings, we thought it just would not be a meeting if we didn't ask for approval of adoption of instructional material. So we actually have Miss Latimer, our math coordinator for grades 6 through 12. She's going to come up and talk about our recommendation for discrete math.
However, in the meantime, Dr. Wexness, are you indicating that this might be the last time you're going to present this
Hopefully for a little while.
in this calendar year?
We're hoping.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Because you have not had fun yet.
This has been very informative. Mine won't be quite as enthusiastic, but thank you for allowing me to present before you. So I'm here to present about a textbook recommendation. Earlier in the school year, you guys approved discrete mathematics for the upcoming school year, so we need a textbook for it. To follow the same selection process as before with math, science, and social studies. So we use the same guidelines from the state. Each school received the option to submit a teacher to come and review the textbooks. I contacted the publishers and requested samples. The publisher sent the samples. The teachers went through the samples. We have one section of discrete math coming this year, but we're anticipating that to grow as the years go on. As we have growth in that area, we'll come back and revisit the text. So right now, we're just going off of the recommendation of a small group, but we'll come back together once we have more teachers teaching the subject. Are there any questions about the materials? Yes, sir.
Not about the materials, but would you please, for us and for the public, explain again what discrete math is and how it's different from other things we've already offered? We've already approved it, I know.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. So to try to do this in simple terms, discrete mathematics is more of a logistics for mathematics. It's about statistics and some algebra incorporated with it as well. Discrete mathematics, what it does is it gives the students another learning progression to get to a 4-year education in college. Discrete mathematics tends to feed more into the computer science realm. So for students who may not want to take calculus or pre-calculus, discrete mathematics gives them an option. It also gives an option for students who need NCAA eligibility but may not want to go along the other progressions. Does that help?
enough.
Without giving you a math lesson?
Please don't.
I'm good for that, but
Yeah, so not all students would want to take discrete mathematics, and some students are still trying to figure out exactly what it is. And so as the years come, we're going to do a little bit more with educating so students can understand the option of discrete mathematics and hopefully want to enter into that pathway.
Generally, are you hoping to offer this at all 3 high schools, or is it'll be just at one school and then children will travel to it and go back?
So initially, we had it picked to go to all 3 high schools. We just didn't have enough interest at all three currently because it's a new topic. So as we're growing and progressing, then it will be available at all three. So they can push that out again next year. And again, that will come back on our end to give them a little more education about discrete mathematics and that progression.
So for this coming year, they will have to travel to it, or it's only offered at one school?
It's only at one school. The other two schools did not have enough students who wanted to enter.
They will not have the option to go to the other school to take the class. That's what I'm asking.
If they wanted to take the course, they did have that option, but they didn't have enough interest to do that.
They didn't want, they might not be as excited as you and I are about this class, but they were not willing to travel, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve thinking mathematically for discrete math course.
Second.
22-23 school
Motion
year,
and a
sorry.
second For thinking mathematically, for our new discrete math class. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, you have a math.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And with that, for those on the phone or on the screen, thank you for joining us. We have you. Sorry, I was going to say executive session. Sorry.
He's used to it.
Talk to us.
You want me to go ahead? All right,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
it, please. Most exciting topic tonight, Superintendent. No, beginning with the calendar of events, of course, tonight's meeting and public hearing, and now approval of a budget. We didn't list that. The 19th through the 22nd is the South Carolina Association of School Administrators Innovative Ideas Institute, which is the summer training offerings that is attended by several hundred principals in the state. And then on the 23rd, we have the 7th annual, as Ms. McCarter mentioned, Tech Dowling Memorial Golf Tournament for the Foundation of Fort Mill Schools to be held at the Palisades Country Club. Other dates that I may have failed to mention.
We're removing the 28th, correct?
It's not on there?
Well, it wasn't on there anyway. Y'all were just kind of chatting about it.
No, it was just, many of us had put it on our calendars as a placeholder, so I'm just verifying that. That's what I'm
It
asking.
sounds like we're going to try and find a date that everybody can be at. So the 28th will not work for everyone.
I don't know what changed. I don't understand it. I don't.
Okay, where was I? Oh, okay, all right. Getting into the enrollment. You may not recall, and I look back tonight, pre-pandemic, we were looking at, the number, if you see, we ended the year, the 180th day at 17,875. I knew that was real close to what we had predicted before the pandemic, but then we came in after the first year of the pandemic and we had readjusted our prediction. So we thought going into this year that we were going to come in at 17,713. So I'm just at my first blush at it, not doing a deep dive. It seems like we've gotten back most of those kids we thought we were not going to get back, that we lost permanently to virtual and so forth. I don't think that's the case. We're back where we thought we'd be.
And it's a mix of both. It's new and re-enrollments.
Yeah.
Oh, and this number, if it's the 180th day, it's not going to include our January
80
graduates.
December graduates.
Exactly.
January,
So it's even-
December
you're right.
graduates.
Good
So
point.
that's your difference.
Good point. So anyway, I thought that was, I felt the whole time we'd get most of them back, and it looks like that's what's happened, I believe. So let's, looking at the teacher attendance winners. At the high school level, we had Catawba Ridge with 93.9. At the middle school level, Banks Trail Middle with 94.8. And the overall winner, and I think she's here tonight, Doby's Bridge Elementary, 96.071. That's why you can't. And it's because of your whip to make them all come to work. I'd like to make a few comments about the year in general, what we just completed. Let me get to my little sheet here. I'm going to read some and make some comments. First of all, let me say, for the past 2.5 years, it's certainly been different for all of us, everybody, teachers, staff, parents. I do believe, however, that we ended the year, that last year was a successful year, and let me tell you what I'm basing it on. We were pretty much one of the first districts, one of the earlier districts to go back to full, out of the ABs. We of course had the challenges with parents in the building. We didn't allow the open building, but as we inched along through the year, I think we managed the virus it was challenging for all of us, but I think we managed it as best we could, as well as anybody in the country. I mean, this isn't just Fort Mill's scenario. And by the end of the year, I think we were pretty much, I was telling Christy at graduation, you looked at the auditorium, and it just felt so good to have seemed to be about as close to normal as we had been on a public event. I know we had ball game crowds and all that, but I'm talking about in the schools. I went to some of the end of the year ceremonies at schools, and it just felt so much like normal. So that's exciting. I believe that we were able to get to that point. I think it means we were successful, in my view, the way we ended the year and getting through the year. But just to point out some, and I don't want to miss anything, individual student awards were too numerous to mention, but several deserve special recognition. The scholarship opportunities, 2 schools reported $11 million apiece, Catawba Ridge and NAFO, and just got off with Zach and Gales. It looks like 13-2 at Fort Mill High, so that's $35 million that our parents are not going to have to spend next year on college. So that's just real proud of that. This academic year, we celebrated our first ever South Carolina Teacher of the Year finalist, Miss Laura Merck. Miss Merck's work is reflective of the caliber and enthusiasm of our teachers in this district, and her recognition at the state level highlighted the excellence of teaching in our district. Throughout the year, our district and individual schools were recognized nationally. Fort Mill High was named a 2021 College Access Champion School, one of 5 schools in the state awarded with this honor by the South Carolina Commission of Higher Ed and the College Board. Springfield Middle School was once again designated as a school to watch by the National Forum to Accelerate Middle Schools Reform. And the district continued to grow as we opened our 20th school in August, Forest Creek Middle, and welcomed them to the family. So I think these facts and all of this together makes me proud of the effort put forth by our staff. And that's what I meant tonight when I talked about honoring our teachers and our staff being the secret sauce. I mean, they're the reason these things happen. We don't make a product. We're 89% staffing. We're into people. Whatever happens in the classroom is what matters. That's where the teaching and learning occurs. And it does not happen unless we have quality staff and hardworking staff and dedicated staff, teachers and others. So that was the whole feeling behind getting this raise out on the table and trying to dignify the profession and make it more than just a barely livable wage. We need to work toward increasing the salaries of all these people. So that's, in general, I just wanted to end with a few of those comments. Certainly glad to get this one in the books. It was a relief. We did shake 1,200 hands the other day, Christy and I, and that was a challenge. My back's just now recovering from standing there, but I just can't thank the staff enough and the public enough for those who are watching and our students for everybody's effort and everybody pulling together. It's typical Fort Mill. We support our public schools. We love our public schools. Not ashamed to ask for help, like Mr. Bodie said. It's one of the reasons I believe, I know I'm prejudiced or biased, I believe that people are moving here because of the quality of our public school system here in town, here in Fort Mill. And I just can't be more proud to work with these folks.
You're here. All right, well, it feels anticlimactic to say we are in need of an executive session
Motion to go into executive session.
to discuss personnel recommendations, contractual issues, and legal issues. So